Hello and welcome to Training Tuesday, where we go through weekly tips and tricks to make your career just a little bit more awesome. This week, we are diving into the topic of saying no, which is a challenge for a lot of people, myself included. I used to struggle so much with this, and I was always the first person. Whenever there was like work being divvied up in a group or something, I would always kind of raise my hand and be like, I'll do it. And then I would get to my desk and I would look at my list of things that I had just committed to, and I was like, why did I commit to all these things? So if that's ever been you, I feel you, this week is just for you. And when it comes to saying no, what we're really talking about today is what's actually going on under the surface, because the reality is this is the really important part to look at. As I talk about off and on here, if something keeps happening and keeps happening and keeps happening, at some point you realize it's a trend and you have to look at what's going on under the surface that's actually driving that behavior. And in terms of saying no to things, a lot of times, the big thing that's coming up for the lion's share of people is that they feel like if they say no to a project or an event or whatever it might be, that they're letting someone else down, right? They feel like if they're asked by their team to help on something, if they say, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now, then all of a sudden they're the bad guy and they're disappointing people. And so they just say yes and yes and yes, and then their list of things to do are so incredibly long that they're feeling really overwhelmed. If this is you, what I want you to focus on this week is understanding why that's happening. And again, if you're associating saying no to something with being a jerk to people, of course it's going to be really hard to do that. But what I wanted to teach you this week was based on The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. If you haven't read that book yet, I will share the link below as to where I link to it on my site. But it's a great book, and she talks about the ways in which people form habits and the ways people do things. And she talks about these 4 tendencies, one of which being the obliger. And the obliger is a person who is really happy to do things that are an external need, but when it comes to an internal need, they don't necessarily prioritize this as much. So what I mean is if someone else asks you to do something, you will make it work and push yourself to make it happen. But when it's you just taking time for yourself or doing something that's a self-imposed ask, it's a lot harder to actually commit to making that thing happen, because it's really easy to be like, well, it was just me who wanted to go to the gym for my sanity, so I guess I can take that off the list. Now, I have an obliger tendency. A lot of people I work with have an obliger tendency, and a lot of people who struggle to say no have an obliger tendency. And it's because it can feel really challenging to, again, it feels like you're letting someone else down, like you're denying them help. And if you're someone who's always kind of prided yourself on being a helper by nature, this can feel really at odds with who you are. And so this week, if you struggle to say no, I want you to understand what might be going on behind that, if that is coming up for you, if it is that you feel like you're being a jerk by saying no to people. And I want you to turn that on its head a little bit. I want you to, as your tip, I want you to start to swap the language on that, swap your thoughts around that, to instead look at using the 4 tendencies to your kind of advantage. Look at how you're actually helping other people by sometimes saying no. And what I mean by that is if someone asks me, right, if I was on a team and they were to say, we really need you to, or would you be able to do this thing? And I straight up don't have capacity for it. If I were to say yes, I would probably do a really poor job. I would work, way overtime and exhaust myself and then put not as good work into the rest of the things I'm doing, right? And so sometimes truly saying no, or saying, is there another way that we could have someone else tap on these things? Or yes, and I have to take something else lower on my list, because that's an option too. It's another way to say no without saying no, right? But if I were to do any of those things, I'm actually doing a service to the team in the long run, because I'm going to be able to stay here. I'm going to be sustainable. I'm going to be able to do this work in a way that doesn't have me just burn out, quit, and leave, right? And so that mental shift of saying, actually, it's helping people sometimes it can be helpful to say no, is the mindset shift I want you to make this week. And I want you to find examples, if you have struggled to say no, find examples of time when saying no was actually the best thing you could have done in a situation where it helped people in the long run, right? Because I think we don't often look at those examples, and so it's hard to believe that they're true. But think about times when it's actually been a really good thing. So make that shift, try that exercise on for size if you're struggling with saying no. And if there's larger mindset things or behaviors that keep coming up, either drop mindset below or send me a direct message, and I'm totally here to help answer questions that you have about any of this stuff. But try that tip on for size. And in the meantime, happy working.